let's begin our discussion of style with some figures that ask the audience to do some mental work, basically asking them to interact with the message. Allusions and rhetorical questions are figures that gain their power from listeners helping to create meaning. So let's go ahead and begin with allusions. Allusions. An allusion references another work without naming it. The audience needs to figure out the reference. Benjamin Netanyahu made a pop culture allusion in the 2015 speech to the U.S. Congress. Then he pulled a rabbit out of the hat and did an illusion. No, here, listen to this allusion.
Iran and ISIS are competing for the crown of militant Islam. Both want to impose a militant Islamic empire, first on the region and then on the entire world. They just disagree among themselves who will be the ruler of that empire. In this deadly game of thrones, there's no place for America or for Israel.
As rhetorician Jeannie Fonestock points out, the fact that only certain audience members with the same cultural experiences can recognize and understand an allusion shows that they can be powerful audience construction devices. You're calling together those audience members that get it. President Bush had many biblical allusions in his speeches, including this one from his 2000 inaugural address.
And I can pledge our nation to a goal. When we see that wounded traveler on the road to Jericho, we will not pass to the other side.
So that reference to the parable of the Good Samaritan is doing a lot. It's highlighting his shared values, and the audience is doing some work to reveal the deeper meaning of his phrase. And when we ask a rhetorical question, we're also asking the audience to fill in some missing information. So a rhetorical question, sometimes called an erotima, involves asking a question where the answer is obvious or implied. It's a question for effect. Now, at a basic level, a rhetorical question also helps you replicate some of the conventions of conversational speech. It can serve as a way of setting up the point you want to make. So, for example, let's say you're announcing an award, right? And you're like, oh, but of all the people that tried, only Eric succeeded. Now, why is this? Because only Eric had the experience to know that, so on and so forth. Not only does that allow for more conversational writing, but the question intonation breaks up the sound of the phrase. Of course, rhetorical questions can also help cultivate a shared sense of audience identity. President Ronald Reagan was particularly adept at this type of rhetorical question. So listen to this bit from his 1980 speech accepting the Republican presidential nomination.
Can anyone look at the record of this administration and say, well done? Can anyone compare the state of our economy when the Carter administration took office with where we are today and say, keep up the good work? Can anyone look at our reduced standing in the world today and say, let's have 4 more years of this?
Not only is this serving as a way of making a general argument, but it places political opponents in the position of having to defend that which has been framed as indefensible. Now, in the U.S., we had one famous rhetorical question that marked the end of a political era. So back in 1954, the U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy held an investigation of the U.S. Army, and it became an unfortunate high watermark in McCarthy's abuse of Senate power and anti-communism. Now, as the hearings came to a close after 30 days of high-profile television coverage, McCarthy accused a young lawyer of communism. And the lawyer for the Army, Joseph Welch, had finally had enough, and he chastises McCarthy, as we'll see here.
Now, I just give this man's record, and I want to say, Mr. Welch, that it has been labeled long before he became a member, as early as 1944.
Senator, may we not drop this? We know he belongs to the Lawyers Guild. Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
I know this hurts you, Mr. Welch.
Mr. McCarthy, I will not discuss this further with you. You have sat within 6 feet of me and could have asked me about Fred Fisher. You have seen fit to bring it out. And if there is a God in heaven, it will do neither you nor your cause any good. I will not discuss it further. I will not ask Mr. Cohen any more witnesses. You, Mr. Chairman, may, if you will, call the next witness.
So after that, things turned pretty bad for McCarthy, right? He lost popular support, he was censured by the Senate, he became an alcoholic, and he died of hepatitis at age 48. Now, the rhetorical question didn't accomplish all of that, but it did make a sharp point. Welch could have just as easily have said, "You have no sense of decency left," but it wouldn't have been as powerful. Welch's exasperated tone with the question belittles McCarthy hugely, right? Hugely effective. So it's not surprising that techniques like allusion and rhetorical questions can often be overused. But when they're used well, they can help create an audience. The audience fills in the gaps and in so doing moves closer to the collective that we want.